How many games will Ole Miss football win in 2020? I'm Studio Upadeh. He's Brian Scott Rippey. We're all hoping there's a college football season. A lot of things up in the air right now, including SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey's statement last week where he was kind of sounded nervous. He seemed like he was pretty much saying, if things don't get better, these numbers don't stop going down, rather, coronavirus, there is genuine risk of us not having an SEC season this fall. Brian, we've already seen the Big Ten and, of course, the Pac-12 take action and say they're going conference only. It seems like the first step in basically some form of a coronavirus-affected college football season. We're hoping it stops at that, obviously. But as of right now, how are you feeling about it? Because I'm starting to feel a little worse than I did a couple of weeks ago, but I'm obviously still holding out hope because that's all you can do.
Right. The news cycle the last 2 weeks has not been good. I mean, it's about as pessimistic as it's been really the whole time. And you mentioned the Big Ten taking that step. I don't think it was a step that the other Power 5 conferences necessarily wanted to take at that time. Like most of the things that I read and heard, it seemed like they were kind of trying to hold out hope, kind of wait till late July. Obviously, by early August, you probably have to have something done. But I think they still had more time to kind of play out the string on this. And I think the Big Ten making that decision kind of felt like these other conferences were backed into a corner in terms of them having to make a call. And I kind of in agreement with the other conferences in the sense that, I don't think that had to be done just yet. Now, I'm not naive. Doesn't seem like we're going to get an on-time start or a normal football season by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think that decision was perhaps a little bit premature. I don't know, man. The news cycle on this has changed so much. 3 weeks ago, you thought all this stuff was dying down and you might have a season and it'd be no problem. And now it's not looking good at all. Who knows what we're going to be in 3 more weeks? So not looking good right now. I think it's probably going to end up going to the conference only games, but that really screws those group of 5 schools that kind of need the money and the buy games and stuff. And with the way conferences are aligned now, Wisconsin can go to Rutgers, New York, and play them in New York, but they can't go to Lambeau to play Notre Dame. I kind of get the sentiment by some degree, but it doesn't actually make a ton of sense. So who knows, man? Who knows what will be in mind?
Yeah, I think, that's been one of the things. So we're going to talk about how many wins Ole Miss can get. That's definitely the point of this video, but we got to get all this out of the way first. I think the reason the conference-only thing, the biggest advantage that does is, it allows you to have uniform protocols, right? If you're going conference only, the commissioner can literally set the rules forward saying, okay, this is how we're going to do testing. These are the processes that are going to be involved in us playing on a week-to-week basis. And obviously, when you're going inter-conference, it leaves a lot of room for disagreements and a lot of back and forth. Whereas when you just go conference only, from the top, you get a message, it goes down theoretically, and that's how it would work. But as of the time we were recording this, the SEC has not made a decision on that. So we're going to act like things are going to be as scheduled. I know that a couple reports, I wouldn't even call them reports, just this few tweets this past weekend saying Ole Miss Baylor was going to be canceled. There's no official word on that yet. So as of right now, we have to assume that game's going to go on. The Rebels are still supposed to open the season, that neutral site game at NRG Stadium in Houston. Brian, I've done a few previews, some scouting reports on some of these teams for the Ole Miss Spirit so far. And based on the stuff I read about just Aranda, what Baylor's bringing back, I think Ole Miss can win the season opener if it happens as scheduled.
Yeah, I think they can too. And that game's going to be really crucial in kind of determining their win total because you got obviously kind of a built-in win the next week at SEMO, but then it gets rough in a hurry, right? 3 straight weeks, Auburn, LSU, and then Alabama. So that late part of September into early October is going to be rough. Doesn't get a ton easier after that. You've got a road game at Vanderbilt, which you think is winnable, but Vanderbilt's always kind of gives Ole Miss a good kind of diagnosis of where their program's at. It seems like Ole Miss beats Vanderbilt when the program is trending in the right direction, and Vanderbilt clips them when Ole Miss is trending in the wrong direction. So you never know at that game. And then you go with stretch with Florida, UConn. It's going to be fascinating. But yeah, that Baylor game is going to be huge in kind of whether this team can actually get to a bowl, whatever type of bowl season we have, but get to bowl eligibility. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting one if we play it.
If we play it, and obviously if is the big big asterisk right there. But in my opinion, yeah, you got two coaches coming in, first year head coaches. Dave Aranda's never been a head coach at the D1 level. And you look at what Baylor has coming back, and their quarterback is good when he's healthy. He's got a lot of head injuries throughout the years. I think it's going to fall to a ground game, and if it's going to a ground game, I think Ole Miss is going to win this one. Neither team has had a lot of spring practice. Neither team has had time to work out together with their new coaching staff and implement stuff. It's probably going to be really messy if it's played, but it's fair to say that I think the Rebels will go 1-0. SEMO, that's a win if it happens. You're right. The three-game stretch right there is really going to determine what the rest of the season looks like for Ole Miss. Between Auburn, LSU, and Alabama, all three teams are really good. LSU has question marks, obviously, no longer having all the talent they did a year ago. I still think they're a 9-10 win team. Auburn is right back up there this year. I mean, their defense is forever good, it seems like. So they're right back in there. And Alabama, they have questions as well. But once again, it's Alabama. It's such an early test for Lane Kiffin in this rather young team, that three-game stretch. And while I don't think they're going to win any of those three games, I think those three games are going to determine what they look like down the stretch. A lot more experience. They're going to learn a lot of lessons. I think they'll be in these games, surprisingly. None of those are going to be blowouts, in my opinion. I think Ole Miss will be in those games. But I do think they're all going to be 0-3, in my opinion. Do you see any – I mean, maybe Auburn, maybe LSU? I don't know about Alabama. Can you see them pulling one of those out?
Auburn's their best bet, without a doubt. But, I mean, to be honest, this is probably an 0-3 stretch for them. But if you're talking about kind of stealing one, and if you're looking for opportunities for Ole Miss to kind of have a Kiffin first-year program defining win, you're probably looking at home games against Auburn and Florida, which is right after the stretch that we're currently talking about. Those seem like the two windows to maybe you kind of pull an upset. Never really know with Auburn. They're probably going to be pretty good defensively. They lost a decent bit on the defensive line. Bo Nick's a year older, but they weren't great offensively last year too. So that's their best bet. At LSU, I know LSU's going to be down. They're probably still partying from winning the whole thing and putting together the greatest college football season ever. But I just don't see it down there. And obviously, I mean, Alabama kind of speaks for itself, although that game is in Oxford. But I don't see it. So Auburn's your best bet there, but you're probably heading into a pretty crucial game at Vanderbilt at 2-3 at best.
Absolutely. Yeah, you talk about Auburn, they bring back really good receivers. They have a deep core of receivers there. Bo Nix, you would think, would take the next step. He can do a little bit of everything. Chad Morris is the offensive coordinator there, so I'm super intrigued to see how that works out this year. I do think, but that's what Gus Malzahn tends to do. I hate to say that because it's not really a statistical thing you can bring up and say this is exactly why this happens. But Gus tends to lose games he's not supposed to lose. You look at Ole Miss a year ago with Matt Luke, they almost beat that Auburn team. I think they lost by a touchdown. So, I wouldn't count that one out for Ole Miss either, but more than likely that's an 0-3 stretch. Vanderbilt's got so many things going on, and it's not good. I know in the past Vanderbilt has gotten Ole Miss when they probably shouldn't have, but between the quarterback situation, Keyshawn Vaughn leaving, their top running back, Kalijah Lipscomb, their top receiver, their top tight end is gone. There's so much missing for Vanderbilt. We know they already struggle on offense. I think they brought in a new offensive coordinator as well. So there's just so much going on at Vanderbilt right now. And they didn't get spring practice either. That one, I think after that 0-3 stretch, Ole Miss gets that win. Florida is the one that intrigues me the most because that one is, I think, what, like you said, could be Lane Kiffin's first signature win because the Gators are an SEC East contender this year. I mean, you just look at the way they played a year ago. You lose Felipe Franks, but then Kyle Trask literally comes out of nowhere. This is a guy no one even knew about. I mean, he was a 2-star prospect coming out of high school, had never played. He hadn't played since freshman year of high school. He just came out of nowhere and went on to be one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. So, I don't know. What do you think about that one? Ole Miss has had luck against Florida in the past.
I don't see it. I'm buying stock in Kyle Trask in Florida. I think Mullen's going to have a really good team, and I think they're actually closer to Georgia than most people think to win the East. So I'm a big believer in Florida. I think they're going to be really good this year. Ole Miss could play them good. It wouldn't absolutely, stun me if they pulled that off, but I don't necessarily see it. I think Florida's going to be good. I think they actually Ole Miss would have a better shot at beating Auburn than they do Florida, in my opinion, particularly in that part of the year because Ole Miss is coming out of a pretty brutal stretch. playing that Florida game, as opposed to you're still kind of fresher against Auburn. So I don't necessarily see that either. I think they take that one on the chin, but probably rebound with a win against UConn the next week. I think that's probably pretty safe to say.
I think so. Yeah, going kind of back to Florida, one of the top secondaries in the country. They lost C.J. Henderson, but they bring back so much more. Marco Wilson's a really talented cornerback. Kyer Elam was a true freshman last year, had 4 picks. They have a safety in Sean Davis. It's an NFL draft pick in the future. I broke all this down to that scouting report for Florida if you guys want to find it later. I mean, they do lose a lot, don't get me wrong, but they have enough talent there. And we know what Dan Mullen, hate him or love him, Dan Mullen is good at coaching offenses. And so we know their offense will probably be back to normal. I still think, though, if after all those tests early in the season, this could be one that Lane Kiffin could pull out, but more than likely as a loss. You bring up UConn. I mean, UConn's on the verge of not even having a football program pretty soon here. The way that the athletic department has mismanaged the football program, it's just been remarkable.
Check out Randy Edsall's bonus structure. If you want to play a drinking game during that game, they play it. The guy gets a bonus if they gain like 20 yards. It's insane. His bonus structure for in-game incentives is the craziest thing I've ever seen. It's like a game of bingo. I've never seen anything like it. So if they are playing football in October, you're probably not going to be allowed to go. So if you want a nice little drinking game at home, go check out his bonus structure and take a shot every time he hits one, because it's literally like every 25 yards.
It's ridiculous. I mean, to bring him back the way they did, trying to recapture that one, I guess it was a Fiesta Bowl season. I don't even think they won that game, but UConn's never been a football powerhouse, and but still, like, you look at other teams in that same conference. Now they're an independent. They used to be in the AAC. You look at all the other teams in the AAC the time they were in there, and the steps those programs took, whether it's Tulane, Memphis, UCF, you can name them, USF even at times. UConn just kind of fell to the side, and they really haven't done that. And I don't know if they're going to have football moving forward. So that should be an easy win for the Rebels. Then we get to the part of the schedule that's going to really determine bowl eligibility for Ole Miss and what bowl they go to if we have bowl games. Start off with Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher hasn't been awful at Texas A&M, but it's been a little disappointing, safe to say, especially that contract he signed after he left Florida State. It's just they haven't been able to put it together, Brian. They lose games they're not supposed to. They really haven't captured that magic they had with Johnny Manziel since Johnny Manziel. They've had 5-star quarterbacks, it seems like, come and go from Texas A&M. But it never seems to work out. I know they think this is the year, finally. Kellen Mond is still quarterback also, which I feel like he's like 80 years old now, and he's still there. Like, how many years of eligibility does this guy have? But how are you feeling about that?
I don't know. That's an interesting game because, Matt Luke's favorite cliche, they remember what you do in November. I've heard that a time or 12. But, yeah, that November stretch is kind of fascinating for Ole Miss. And, I think A&M's going to be good. They certainly think they're going to be good. But you never know. I mean, it's kind of like that Charmin-like softness that someone had with them. You never know what state they're going to be in by November, right? They kind of always take that mid to late October crash. I don't necessarily see Ole Miss winning that game, but who knows what kind of state A&M's going to be in at that point, because their schedule is really easy to start out. They could start 6-7-0. They go to Alabama, and the schedule stiffens up. So are they kind of trending down at that point? That's a fascinating game. Then you get Arkansas late in the year, which is kind of interesting. I do think Ole Miss probably wins that one just by the sheer state of shambles that Arkansas's program is currently in. I don't know anything about Tim Pittman. I don't know if he's going to be a success or not, but I do know if he is, it's going to take a while. So, yeah, back-to-back road games are going to be crucial there. Ole Miss needs to go 1-1 in that stretch for sure.
I agree. Yeah, you go back to A&M. They bring back a lot. Obviously starting quarterback, their top, I think, rushers back, their top receivers back. Their offensive line was in shambles last season. I think a year ago as well. They've allowed a ridiculous amount of sacks over the last 2 seasons. If that doesn't improve, I can see Ole Miss winning this one. But this one will be close. But you know what? This is the one I'm going to say. Outside of Florida, Auburn, I'm going to give those as L's to Ole Miss. But I think A&M will be that first win, if A&M's still ranked, for Lane Kiffin late in the season to build momentum to go into 2021. I want to say at this point they're going to be hitting their stride, figuring stuff out finally, making adjustments on a week-to-week basis. And this is where it pays off. It's this Texas A&M game. I'm going to give the Rebs a win here. You talk about Arkansas. Sam Pittman's very familiar with that area, knows how to recruit to Arkansas, has been there in the past, one of the top offensive line coaches in the SEC. So he does have somewhat of a pedigree and something that he's good at. And so that's a positive. They get Felipe Franks. hasn't really met his expectations coming out of high school. He was the top-ranked prospect when he went to Florida. Now he's a transfer at Arkansas. But they do bring back, a good running game. They have some okay targets, I believe, at receiver. And more than anything, Kendall Briles is the offensive coordinator. Lane Kiffin's familiar with his work, obviously. But I think they'll take the step in the right direction and maybe a closer game than we think. Arkansas always plays Ole Miss that way, no matter how good or bad they are. To the point that you look at the year Jordan Ta'amu was a senior, that ridiculous come-from-behind win they had that year. So I hate to count them out, but I'm going to give the Rebs a win there as well.
I agree. I think they take that one. So they're sitting at 4 wins at that point. I think that we're counting heading into a kind of a 2-game stretch to end the year with Georgia Southern and State. And like that, I mean, they likely go into the Egg Bowl with bowl eligibility on the line, it seems like. I think I'll give them a win against Georgia Southern. But, yeah, I mean, talk about a home Egg Bowl, Kiffin's first year with bowl eligibility on the line. First time Ole Miss would go to a bowl in a half decade, and Mike Leach coming in. That's
Mike. Not only Mike Leach. Yeah. Yeah, not only Mike Leach coming in, but you also bring in KJ Costello to start. Well, he hasn't been named the starter. They haven't had spring practice either. But it's kind of hard to say that he won't be the starter. I mean, a 62.6% career completion percentage, over 6,000 passing yards, close to 50 touchdowns in his time at Stanford. The guy's been all Pac-12 in the past. He's good. He's a good quarterback. This is what Mike Leach does. I wouldn't be surprised if in year 1 they were to win this one, but I think Ole Miss is going to be hitting such a stride at that point that we'll have a bit of a shootout at the Vaught for this Egg Bowl. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously Mississippi State's got Kylan Hill as well, who's one of the most talented running back in the SEC. But I don't know what they have at receiver. Even if they have KJ Costello, who I'm sure can find some targets, I don't really know who that returning guy is that we point to and say that's his main target. But you would think by the end of the season they'd have that somewhat figured out. So I'm going to say this is going to be a close Egg Bowl, a bit of a shootout, the fun game, if we have it, that everyone's going to expect this one to be. All the cameras are going to be in Oxford that Saturday. Or is it on Thanksgiving this year? Do we know that?
Still Thursday, unfortunately. My mom is not real fired up about that. But, still Thanksgiving night. Still
Thanksgiving night, so I know you'll be there. So that Thursday, obviously ESPN will be in town. It's going to be a fun environment. But I'm going to give this one to the Rebs just because, I went there. It's a rivalry game. We're working for the friggin' Ole Miss Spirit. I mean, I'm not going to pick Mississippi State right now. But it's going to be a close one. I don't think it's some sort of a shutout win for Ole Miss or anything like that.
No, I think Ole Miss wins that one as well. I don't know whether Mike Leach is going to succeed or fail at State. It's fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to watch. But I think they're at a personnel disparity. I don't think they have the cogs to kind of make the machine work this year. Like, you're counting on a lot of receivers who have just not produced at all at the SEC level, and most of them aren't young. And so, you kind of know what they are at this point. Mike Leach has won 8 games a year everywhere he's gone. I think it's just going to take him a year or two to kind of get personnel in there. So I think Ole Miss wins this one as well. And it has a very 2012 vibe to where that gets them to bowl eligibility, and it's kind of a pretty good stepping stone in terms of kind of shifting the direction of the program. Because you talk about 2 coaches coming in, and inheriting a roster. Kiffin's kind of doesn't have to reshape it as much as Leach does, I guess, for the lack of a better phrase. So I actually think Ole Miss wins this one as well to get to 6-6.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Just a little bit back to Mississippi State. I think defense is going to be the key to Ole Miss winning that one. They don't have much. I think Errol Thompson is the only really big name coming back for them. Outside of that, there's a lot of work to do. Now, their DC is, I think, pretty well respected. Zach Arnett, I believe. He came from San Diego State. Had some pretty good defenses there. So that he's got a good pedigree. He can work with these guys, maybe build something down the road. But, yeah, I think in year 1, Lane Kiffin's going to take this. So let's count it down. 6-6. So Baylor's a win, we're saying. SEMO's a win. So you're 2-0 to start the season. Then you lose 3 straight. So you're 2-3. Get the one against Vandy to go 3-3. Lose to Florida 3-4. Connecticut beat them 4-4. I say they beat A&M. So 5-4. Beat Arkansas 6-4. Beat Georgia Southern 7-4. Beat Mississippi State 8-4. It sounds too good to be true, Brian, but I'm going with it. It might be the homer take here, but I'm going to say best case for them is 8-4. I think the worst case would be obviously not making a bowl game, but really realistically, like you said, I think 6-6 would be would be what you'd go with, basically giving them losses against Texas A&M and then, one other team possibly, whether that's Arkansas or even State.
I guess I can't count. I guess I guess we disagreed on Texas A&M, and that's it. So I actually had them at 7-5. So that's your Jackson Academy math education for you.
Hey man, be proud of that. Be proud of that. And if you don't play the non-conference, then obviously you take out SEMO, Baylor, Georgia Southern, and Connecticut. So that leaves you with 8 games. So you can figure it out there. You probably wouldn't quite reach bowl eligibility, but I think they would maybe make an exception at that point, and you could get in with less wins. So we're all hoping we have the college football season. We're obviously super excited to see year 1 under Lane Kiffin, and you guys should be too. And you're going to want to follow the Ole Miss Spirit for the best content available, omspirit.com. Get on there, go sign up, become a part of the message board community there. It's a lot of fun on there, especially when Yancey gets to talking about Cruton. It's going to really be a lot of fun. This is actually my last video contributing with the Spirit. So I may be back in the future. I may not. It's always home to me. Even if I'm doing something else, Chuck's always cool about letting me come on and give my take. So it's been a pleasure working with you the last few weeks, Brian.
Absolutely, dude. It's been fun. Congrats on the new gig.
I appreciate it, man. I'm hoping we get the 2020 NFL season so I can keep that gig, or else you guys might see me back on the Spirit. I don't know. But you can follow me at Suda Upadeo on Twitter. Follow Brian at BS Rippy. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
BS Rippy, omspirit.com. Thanks, guys, for joining. And as always, hotty toddy.